Okay, we're going to deal with those views that are B, C, and D from the jacket with the set sleeves. B, C, and D. Now, here's what it involves. It involves lacing, and it involves a stomacher. The stomacher is the part that goes underneath. And it happens that today I'm actually wearing a stomacher with lacing because we're working on this project. Now, the neat thing about a stomacher is you can have more than one. So if I had wanted to, I could have had a brown stomacher in here today and it would have gone perfectly fine. I could have had a beige stomacher that matched my jacket. I could have had any number of different colors if I wanted to highlight a red or an orange. I could always have a different stomacher. So although they're not that simple to make, they're very handy because they change your look very quickly and they're not that hard. However, they do involve some different products that you might have maybe never used before. One of them is a very strong tape. Now this happens to be, honest to goodness, boning tape. It has a little hole in here that I can maybe access that you stick the boning inside of. I have to admit, in all of the years that I worked in the theater and I made corsets and all sorts of stuff, we never did that. You know why? Because 2 layers of this tape is stronger than 1 layer of this tape. And if we stitch down on each side, rather than use the little tiny casing in here, we use the whole casing to make it stronger. But if you can't find this tape, which is not particularly easy to find, you can use other kinds of tape, but keep that in mind that maybe 2 layers is better than 1. Another product we're going to need is boning material of some sort. Now, I'm sure you didn't expect me to take out a bag of zip ties, but right now, many historic reenactors are making their stays with zip ties. They're inexpensive, they're very easy to acquire, and they work. If you want to be more faithful, in the 18th century, they didn't have metal bones like this bone, and I have to say my stays are made with metal bones, but they did have instead pieces of reed that they would soak and dry, and they would put those into their corsets. Now, honestly, I tight lace. If I did that, I would have a lot of broken reeds. Having metal inside mine, I don't need to worry about that. Nonetheless, this is what we're going to be needing. So I suggest you run out to Home Depot or Lowe's and get some zip ties. So right now what I'm doing is I'm flat lining the lining, or the interfacing to my lining. And flat lining is not a pretty thing, but it works really well. It just basically means go around the whole exterior outside edge so that they become one piece of fabric. So now I am putting my boning tape into place. And you'll notice that I've given extra amount at the top of each one of these because they're going to have to fold over in order to make a safe casing. And I have pinned them down. I will be stitching on each side as close as I can to the edge. Oopsie. But I want to make sure that you're aware that the bottom doesn't matter much. Whoopsie, don't cut the pin. Not good for your scissors. The top, I'm going to want to fold down and put in place well away from the seam line. So that's not enough yet. I want to make sure that that is absolutely not going to be caught in my seam once I turn my stomacher right side out, because this will be clean finished along with the outer fabric. So that's about the distance I'm going to make sure that I'm away from that top edge with all of these. Stitch to the right width. Okay. So I've now stitched, leaving an opening from here to here. Now that's a fairly big opening. Even when I stitched the jackets, I left a smaller opening, more like this. The reason I left this one so big is because we've added stiffener and this heavy boning tape. And I know that it's going to be hard to manipulate to get it through a small opening. So I left it larger just to allow manipulation. Why do it the hard way when you can do it the fast way? I'm actually going to do one more line of stitching at the base of each of these bone casings, because with time and with gravity, that bone will force its way out. So you might as well give a little bit of extra oomph there. before I turn it, I'm actually gonna iron my seams open. This means that I'll end up with a sharper edge when I'm ready to turn it. So it's not a bad idea to sometimes just pre-iron a place that you know you're going to do a hard iron on when it's finished. Doesn't hurt anything to, oh, that's where my opening is. Where my opening is, I'm just gonna maybe do the other side too. Doesn't hurt to prep just a little bit. Now I'm a little concerned about this bottom edge because I have white tape and the brown, that white tape might show. If I was a professional, I would have had black tape. I don't have black tape, I've got white. So if that edge does actually show in the long run, I can just take a magic marker and mark over that on the inside or on the outside when I get there. And, you know, a little bit of brown on that white tape, and it looks brown. You can see what I mean about that edge here. If I want to make that more invisible, I can put brown marker on the white. All right, so now I just need to do a hard press and turn out my corners better than this, which I want nice sharp corners, not just foldy over corners. But for right now, because I have other things to do with you, all I'm going to say is remember you can put your stays in now this way. You can color those edges so that they don't show. And that would mean you'd have a finished stomacher. So we have our thread ready to go, but first we have to push the hole through the fabric. And I have a number of different awls here. This one is literally from Home Depot. This one is a very lovely, very sharp and pointy one, which I'm going to start with. This one's an antique, and all three of these work really well, and I might actually use all three of them on this right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my very pointy one and put this right on my dot and force it through, so that I've now punctured a hole through all of the layers of my fabric. I'm going to take my one from Home Depot and make that hole bigger by twisting it. And I know it doesn't look like very ladylike sewing, but this is what is necessary to make the fibers separate from that hole so that we can get an eyelet big enough to put ribbon through. And you'll see I now have a nice big opening. And the reason I like this one, it's easier to carry in most situations, so if I'm hand sewing somewhere else, it does the same kind of job that this guy does. It just doesn't do the pointy part as well. So I like these two in conjunction when I'm working away from home. But boy, when I'm at home, this is a really good tool. So I'm going to start by putting my thread so that my knot gets buried in between the layers of my jacket. So my very first stitch is going through the hole in between the layers and burying that knot inside where I'll be stitching. From now on, I'm just going to go in the hole. I'm not going through any fabric at all, just going through the hole. And I'm going to go right next to my last stitch at about, 3/16 of an inch. Yes, I do know what 3/16 of an inch looks like. I'm wrapping my thread over my needle so that it's interlocked. And then I'm going to go through the hole at a distance of the hole at 3/16, right next to my last stitch, thread over the knot, or over the needle rather. And I'm going to do that the entire way around my eyelet. You don't want your stitches too close to each other because if they overlap a little too much, they get bumpy. So you do want them to be separate from each other. I've gone about 1/8 of the way around my circle so far. Oopsie, didn't wrap around. There we go. So you do that all the way around until you come to the last stitch. And in the last stitch, you're going to actually interlock through the very first stitch that you did so that you have a full circuit of interlocking stitches. Ladies, it's been a pleasure to take you through these 3 different jacket patterns. And if you get confused, remember there's always some help. First of all, your patterns came with special instructions. Second, you can go online to other videos. And third, don't forget our online blog site at njdarsews250.wordpress.com. I hope to see these finished jackets in the near future, and I'm sure they're all going to be wonderful. It's been so much fun, and have a great time sewing. Bye now.